Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. The Breeders Academy proudly presents Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano, a show for serious breeders.
Whether you are looking to create a new strain or simply improve an old one, you have come to the right place.
Daddy, I want more chickens.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's your host, Kenny Troiano.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bred to Perfection. My name is Kenny Troiano, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you become a better breeder and taking your strain to the next level. That's right, my friends. It doesn't matter if you are brand new to breeding or you've been breeding for many years. There is something all of us can do to improve our fowl for future generations.
So you'll pick me up tonight at 7:45?
Well, no, I got a few things to take care of first, but why don't we make it 7:45?
Stop it.
Okay, 7:45.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, and I'm here with my co-hosts Nancy and Frank Bradley. What's going on, guys?
Thank God it's Friday. That's all I can say. Thank God.
Well, the way we start the show, it felt like a Monday.
That's every time, though.
No, that was really bad. I mean, right before we went on, nobody's equipment was working. We got somebody to work, and then someone else wasn't working. Then I got another person working. It's like, what the heck?
I think it paid off, though.
Yeah, it's better now, isn't it?
All right. So we went to Knott's Berry Farm yesterday and we were having lunch, and there was a gentleman off to the side with his daughter, and Kenny kind of looks over at him and he sees the guy in his phone's like this, and he's going like this. And Kenny's like, what's he doing? And then he sees it. Kenny sees him and he like puts the phone down like this, and his daughter goes looking up into nothing. I tell you guys, if you see us out and about anywhere, come say hi. We are approachable.
Yeah.
Right, Kenny?
I know I come off unapproachable, and when they finally do get the nerve up to come and talk to me, we treat them like we've known them forever. I don't know.
Sort of like when we was at the whale tank, Kenny. Remember when I was out there last year? We was at the whale tank, and there was some guys over to the side, and they just kept staring and staring, but they never would approach us, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept looking over there, and he kept looking up, looking back at his phone.
And he was wearing his hat, so he was totally noticeable yesterday.
Yeah.
It was fun. We had a good time.
Okay, so I want to welcome all our new members. Make sure you guys check out the Start Here pages. And I know there's a lot of information on there. Just don't try to absorb it all at one time. And if you need any help, just let me know. And there's going to be a lot of new programs and courses coming. We have a lot of stuff in the works. Keep you pretty busy, but want to make sure if you have any issues, just let me know. And we did make some changes to the website, especially to the menu. Hope you like it. And the website's just going to keep getting better and better with information that we're putting on there. I'm always looking for new ways to make it easier to navigate. For the members, make sure after the show to go to the website where we're going to do the after show. Today, we're going to be talking about clone worthy. How do you know if your birds are worth cloning? So we're going to go through that. For those who are not members, we're going to be doing an hour or so on the front end. If you want to become a member, just go to the registration page and sign up for the Breeders Academy. If you do it now, you get instant access to the website and you can actually join us. We got the Members Roundtable, which is the after show. We have the Masters Class videos. We got the Founders Program, which I think is the best program for creating a strain, improving a strain, maintaining a strain out there. I've seen a lot of different programs, Frank, but I've never seen one like the Founders Program.
Well, a whole program. That's what I look at it. Science-backed. It's a whole program. A lot of times you see these so-called breeding programs. It's either one method, and they're trying to use that one method to maintain and improve their birds, and it can't be done with just one method. It takes numerous methods to do, like the Founders Program has.
And do them in the right order, too.
Right. And there's other aspects of it. If you run into this problem, you can go around that problem when you get to that point.
And then we have a lot of programs and courses that support the Founders Program. You're going to get your daily articles, and you're going to save a lot of money, too. By joining and learning, you're going to be culling birds you don't need. I really do believe that the money you'll save just by being a member and what you're learning, and the fact that you're getting rid of birds you don't need and only breeding to the birds actually going to progress your strain, it's going to pay for the membership. We're always going to be adding new content, a lot more videos, and those Masters Class videos are the members' favorites. And make sure to join the newsletter, which is called our Breeders Bulletin. It's our version of a newsletter. There you're going to get some free tips on breeding. Okay, on with the show. Frank, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be one that I think is going to excite people to want to become a breeder. It's going to give them an idea what it takes to not only become a breeder, but to create a strain, why it's so important.
For me, it's what made me a more serious breeder, because one day I threw my hands up and I said, I'm done buying birds from other people. You hear this, oh, he's got such great birds. This guy's bird's wonderful. This guy's bird's wonderful. And you go get them and you're paying big dollars for pretty much junk that people saying that's good birds. And I know this has all happened to people out there, and people's going to relate to what I'm saying. And some people saying, I don't know what he's talking about, but the majority out there know what I'm talking about. And that proved to me that I needed to educate myself and go in a different route to where I wanted to be breeding the chickens and people coming to me wanting to buy the chickens. I wanted to change the pathway. It didn't happen overnight. It's been a long journey, but you do get there.
I think the biggest problem is finding good birds, when in truth, the birds they need a lot of times is right in their backyard.
You took the words right out of my mouth. You took the words exactly right out of my mouth. That was the next thing I was going to say. Me, myself, a lot of things that we talk about or I talk about on the live show is my personal experience, basically. Because I've been down that road. I know any scenario with chickens, I've probably been there at one time, good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think a lot of times people's always looking to that next breeder to solve their problems rather than wanting to do it themselves. But once you make the determination to educate yourself and do it yourself, it's so rewarding. That was the best thing. Next to marrying my wife and my child being born, that was probably one of the biggest accomplishments that I ever done right there, was making my own strain.
Okay. I'm being very polite and careful tonight, because if I'm not, Kenny is going to come out here and keep my mouth shut.
You never did answer my question, Nancy.
What was that?
Is that tape double-sided?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right.
It's just regular,
It's just
old
regular duct tape. I put it in front of her to kind of warn her. No
Shut my
talking
butt
over
up.
everybody.
You just talked over me, mister. All right. So what was my question? Crap.
No,
I
it was your
messed you up,
question.
Nancy.
No, I did have a question. Okay. Here's the question. The biggest issue for some people is they think of a breeding method as their whole entire breeding program, when it's only just a small piece of the bigger picture. You understand what I'm saying?
That's what Frank was talking about a second ago, is there's so many different breeding methods. And we may touch on this a little bit here tonight, but there's so many different breeding methods. And they have no clue that it takes multiple methods to actually create a program. And some of them think inbreeding is a breeding program. Some people think line breeding is a program. And we've been talking about this quite a bit lately. And Frank brought it to my attention, and it really took me a while to, I guess, get the clue, because it just wasn't registering with me, that Frank kept saying it was a maintenance program. And I always thought, if they thought it was a program, they thought it was a program to improve. But I'm hearing other interviews of breeders, they're not even talking about the idea of improving birds or improving a family. They're talking about trying to keep the family as good as they got them from the original breeder, and they're using line breeding to do it. Then when they explain line breeding, it's not even line breeding. Line breeding is one of the simplest methods to use, and it's amazing how many people actually get it wrong. And a lot of times they think they're using line breeding when they're actually back crossing. Most people don't even know what back crossing is. And we'll talk about this more, but what do you think, Frank?
It's like we say this every time, but I'm reminded of it every week. You go on social media, you see it. Every time you go on there, people thinking line breeding, just what Kenny said, is the whole thing.
if they're not looking at line breeding as a maintenance program to keep them the way they are, they just think it's a program and they think it's the beginning, the middle, and the end. And my members of the Breeders' Academy know by looking at the Founders Program, there's a place for line breeding, but it's not the whole thing. It's not the beginning, and it's definitely not the end. There is so much that needs to be done before you get into line breeding. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people are trying to clone birds, and we think of it as a cloning process. And there's many processes within the Founders Program, so don't think that's the only thing and start doing it. And I'm going to explain why, too, is that before you can start so-called cloning a bird, the way we consider cloning, there's so much that needs to be done. There's a huge cleanup process because a lot of people are cloning birds that aren't ready to be cloned. Birds that have a lot of issues, a lot of genetic diversity, a lot of variability, and it's showing up in the offspring generation after generation. Then they get to the full life of the bird, which is usually 7/8 to 15/16 of his offspring bred back to him or her, and they still didn't reach any uniformity. So there's a lot that needs to be done before line breeding, and there's a lot that has to be done after line breeding. But what I was going to say too is once they realize that the birds that they need isn't in someone else's yard, a lot of times they have the birds they need in their yard. I've went many times to their farm and looked over their birds, and it was either they wanted to buy one of my birds or somebody else's birds, but they didn't realize the bird they need was already on their yard, or they were using the wrong bird on their yard when the right bird was in another pen that they weren't even touching.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Once they realize they have the right birds, then all they need to do is learn how to create their own string, and then they can move forward.
Okay, so Robbie was saying in his area, in and inbreeding is the only way to go.
If they even know what that means. Now, I know Robbie probably does, and maybe that's why he's referring to it. Not that they were calling it in and inbreeding, but he's considering their breeding method to be in and inbreeding, which is basically uncle to niece, aunt to nephew, cousin to cousin, many times half brother to half sister. It's everything but inbreeding. And so they're trying to create a family by skirting the edges of the family instead of actually going in hard and cleaning up the bloodline as they go. And I don't want to get into it too deep because then we're just talking about the Founders Program. But in and inbreeding just doesn't get you there. So I try to avoid it at all costs. The main thing is they need to make a choice. Do they buy fowl from other breeders, or do they create their own strain? And each one of them has their pros and cons. And then you have to decide how deep you want to get into it. If you just want to buy birds from someone all the time, then fine. But if you want to try to create a family from someone else's birds, there are going to be some issues. And we're going to talk about that today. But one of the questions I have for you guys that are watching this and listening to us is, are you satisfied with the fowl you have? And do they need to be improved? Or maybe you don't know they need to be improved. Do they have what they need? Do they represent their breed? Do they look like birds you're going to be able to move forward with? Do you have a good mate for them? Does it look like you're going to be able to create a family from them? So there's some choices you need to make. Do you want to create a strain, or do you want to just keep buying birds from other people? One seems easier, but it doesn't make the progress that you think it would be because there's so much to be cleaned up. But if you're just creating your own strain and working it through something like the Founders Program, little by little, you get there. But many times you don't with other people's birds. If they're always going to rely on other people's birds, then they're going to be relying on those other birds' faults. Any issues that are attached to that bird, they're going to have to deal with that. Whereas if they just make up their mind to create a strain, whether they're working with those birds and move forward and not have to rely on those people again, or they're actually finding birds on their yard and then starting from there, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is they need to make a decision on what direction they want to go. Do they want to be a breeder, or they just want to keep buying fowl?
And I can see where you're going with that. And I can see this too. This is what I see a lot of people doing. Rather than doing all the hard work, they'd rather go pay for the birds, get the birds, and have instant gratification of having good birds. I see that. I really do. But you can't take and buy somebody else's birds, bring them home, and feed them just a low-grade, crappy feed and not take care of them and still live in the limelight of having good birds. You still got to put the work in one way or the other. So I say, you got to put all that work in anyway. Why not do it yourself? Educate yourself, become a member, educate yourself, and do it the way it's supposed to be done, and not rely on these other guys. I tell you, that was the best thing I ever done in my life, though, Kenny, when I took that step to say, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to be the ones breeding the birds. I'm not relying on anybody else from here on out. And once I done that, it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
I'm not sure who this is. When you keep bringing in blood from other breeders' yard, you're constantly bringing in disease and sickness. Well, that's true. And so maybe in some lethal genes, but you're bringing in all the genes that are within that bird, anything that bird's carrying with it, because a lot of times they're mongrels. A lot of people want to think they're just simple crosses, maybe hybrids, but chances are they're mongrels. So there's a lot of blood have to weed through. And if they're just breeding them for one season, bringing in new blood, crossing them, they're getting so much genetic diversity, so many different variables. It's unpredictable. They don't know what they got. So I'm back to what I was saying, that they need to make a choice. They really do.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, really. And a lot of times, even though people are doing what they're supposed to do as far as the breeding and keeping a closed yard, not adding outside blood, it's hard not to do. You're out, you see a certain bird, you want it so bad. I know, I've been there, I've done that, but it's not worth it. I promise you it's not worth it. Stick with what you've got in your yard, what was bred and raised in your own yard. Make those birds what they should be, select the standouts, do your breeding methods the way you're supposed to, and I promise you'll be a much, much happier chicken person and breeder.
The problem with buying other people's birds is you're relying on that breeder's birds, but the fact is that they're not creating pure families. I only know of a handful of people that I would say are really true breeders. They're actually trying to create a family. So you're paying a lot of money for crosses, for hybrids, for mongrels. I want to try to get people off of relying on other breeders and then become breeders themselves.
The thing about it is, though, Kenny, if you look at it in this aspect, if you go get the birds that you want and start them on the Founders Program, even though if you paid a lot of money for them and they're crosses, you're still good to go. Make sure it's the birds that you want. Don't start out with anything other than the best that you can get and afford, okay? But that's what makes the Founders Program so unique. We can take those cross mongrel birds and transform them into a pure family. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to make a couple breedings and say, oh, well, this is my family. Ta-da, this is my own strain. You start out even with good birds, you're looking at, what, Kenny, maybe 5 years to clean them up good.
5 or 6 years
to get them there, and then another, 8 to 10 to really get them to where you want them as far as the traits that they hold.
Yeah. Well, I look at all these other breeders out there that people rely on getting their birds. And if you think about it, compare them to a regular hatchery. A hatchery, they don't selectively breed. They don't cull out the crap. They're breeding from birds that have all kinds of issues, and they're not improving the breed. They're just producing what they can out of them, selling what they can out of them, and then they start over the following year. In this case, for as far as some of these gamefowl breeders, they just keep bringing in new blood each year to refreshen, instead of actually going through the motion of creating a family. My biggest problem is they just don't selectively breed.
Yeah, they're basically diluting that muddy water is all they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not breeding anything out. They think they may be breeding it out, but they're not breeding it out. The only thing they're doing is diluting their bloodline, what they've worked to make. They're just diluting it and probably breeding a lot of traits out that they wanted to keep in the original bloodline. They're doing away with them.
This is a really good comment because I agree. Hatcheries are breeding for numbers, but I actually think a lot of these breeders are breeding for numbers too. They're producing a lot of birds. They're not culling out the crap. They're not weeding out the defects. If they think they can get some money from it, they're going to. And depending on where you're at on the totem pole of their priority and whether you're going to get good birds or not, chances are you're going to get, depending on who you are, it's going to depend on how good of a bird you're going to get. And the lower end of the totem pole you are, the worse birds you're going to get. And if you think you're going to get a deal, like you want to break and they give you a discount, probably you're getting their culls.
Well, I said that in a post here just a couple of days ago in a gamefowl group. People was asking about where to buy from. And I'm not putting down none of the bigger breeders. This is my opinion. If right now, if I wanted birds, I would find a smaller backyard breeder to get birds from. And I would look at his record and his reputation. I do my homework on that person. And I'd much rather go someone's little small farm that's single mating, breeding in a proper way than I would go to a farm that's just breeding hybrids and they're putting one cock in with 30 hens and hoping for the best. And every bird has a value. You see it all the time. Blemished birds, half priced. What they're calling blemish could be wry tail, crooked toes, what we call defects. But they're selling these birds and people's breeding them and they're calling them blemish, but it's basically defects.
Yeah. This is a good one too. When I see people buy P1 fowl, basically seed fowl, I'm assuming he's saying, and still bring in an outside blood in 5 years, it makes no sense. The P1s look good. They never make it to the first F2, so it makes his head spin. And I was just going to say that too, because if you look at the way so many breeders, I mean, there's one that had a video out, and I want it so bad to be able to use it and talk about, because all the things she was saying to do, or what she does, or what a lot of the other breeders do, is everything I tell people not to do. And one of the biggest ones is, I sound like a broken record, I know, guys, is that I breed my birds pure. They're as pure as the day I got them. Every 5 or 6 years, I just add a little blood to refresh them. And I'm sure that's what he's talking about here. And we say it all the time, is that they're not refreshing anything. They think they're breeding in blood. They think by breeding it in over many generations, breeding it back out, hoping to keep the good stuff and still maintaining their old bloodlines, they're creating variability. They're creating a lot of genetic diversity. They're not able to really predict their offspring for many generations. And again, we know through meiosis, and one of the biggest things meiosis does, whenever you're crossing birds, meiosis, what it does is it actually creates variation. That's the job of meiosis, is to create variation. When you take two birds that are unrelated, you're basically creating unique gametes, unique sperm and unique eggs, which are distributed throughout the family in multiple directions so that there's no predictability. And so when you bring in new blood, you recombinate the genes. You didn't add genes. You didn't refresh the blood. You change them completely. And what happens is they'll breed them for a number of generations, start cleaning up just when they're starting to make progress again. They freak out thinking that they're getting too inbred, which if they're looking like they're inbred, chances are it was just poor selection. And then they infuse new blood and start all over again. And so that's the blood. When you buy birds from a lot of these breeders, and I know I pick on them, I just can't stand the way some people breed. And when I see a peddler, I can't help but to go after that, because I think most of you who are watching this show are the ones getting hurt by this, because you guys are not spending a little money. You're spending a lot of money for these birds that aren't worth it. That's my feeling. I work very hard to show you how to create strains instead of keep on buying and relying on other breeders.
Yeah, but going back to that, a lot of them, though, Kenny, doesn't know that it can't be bred back out. They don't know what they're actually doing to those birds. And the only thing they're seeing is the result of hybrid vigor, and they don't understand hybrid vigor. It's a smokescreen. It's an illusion. It doesn't really exist past that one bird. You can't use those birds. I mean, if you start from scratch, a seed fowl, yes, you can use those birds, but you can't go breeding those birds in a line breeding or the old-fashioned way of cocker breeding, I call it. You can't use it that way, because you use these birds, I promise you, you're going to go downhill and downhill fast breeding those birds.
I make it sound like it's nefarious, like they're like doing something really bad. And maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them know better, but I actually do think that some of them think that's how it works. That adding new blood and be able to refreshen it and then pull it back out, keeping the good stuff, and then doing that every so many years is the way it's supposed to be done. I actually do think they believe that. Although the person I was talking about a second ago, she obviously heard our show, because she talked about, I don't know how they think they can breed for 30 years. I don't think it could happen. I can't remember exactly what she said, but it just showed me she did listen to what we said. But even after listening to us, it wasn't enough to convince her that the way she's doing it is wrong. But I do think they believe that they're doing it the right way, some of these guys.
Well, the reason they don't think it can be done is because they don't know how to do it. If you know how to do it, it can be done. I'm proof of that. I've got one strain, 37 years. I've never added any outside blood to it. So I know it can be done. And they didn't go into inbreeding depression. That's another thing right there, Kenny. And I want to say this. If there is not a formulation, a method in a breeding program that refreshes your flock with inside, then it's no good. And that's all I'm going to say about that. You've got to have a whole program to where it works out, to where you're doing what adding the blood to it does. I mean, it's got to be a whole program. It can't be a couple methods and say, oh, here's your breeding program. It can't start and end in two methods. It can't do it.
Yeah, this one gets me. And I hear this a lot. Pretty birds are nice to look at, but okay. It's like they're disregarding the pretty bird. I think all birds should look good. And I think it was last week, didn't we talk about the complete package? Mm-hmm. Okay. And everybody wants to say, oh, we can't follow Kenny. All he cares about is pretty birds. And I'm like, no, I want a good looking bird. I want a bird that represents its breed. I want a bird that has the right type conformation, right carriage, right station, the right color. I want everything. I want that bird to have everything it's supposed to have. I want every bird represents its breed in every way. That kind of comment cracks me up because they want to make that the big part of it. And I think it's the whole package that counts. Yes, they should look pretty too. Okay.
I'm going to give them something to think about on this question. Okay, you go to a guy's yard. He's got what you call all pretty birds. They're all just beautiful. If that breeder has got enough education and knowledge to make all those birds one conformation and all look the same and all pretty birds, don't you think they've got the same knowledge and tools to make that bird what he needs to be on the inside? Because I'm going to tell you right now, a guy that can make all his birds look the same way in every aspect, the same conformation and same type, can do anything he wants to with those birds. He can make them any traits that he wants. They're putty in his hands. That's how it goes. All birds are supposed to be pretty. They're not supposed to be ugly. That's the thing people gets in their mind. Ugly birds is supposed to be cold, and good-looking birds is supposed to be the one carrying on the line. That's how it's supposed to be.
So what makes them think that someone who breeds for pretty isn't selecting for the other traits too?
Oh, wise tales.
Yeah. It takes the whole complete package to make it all work. I don't care what breed you're breeding. It's the complete package that makes the difference. And someone who's breeding just for pretty feather, I can guarantee you they're going to lose type and conformation. Again, every breed has a purpose. Every bird is bred for a purpose. And that type and conformation dictates whether they can accomplish that purpose, no matter the breed. So if I'm breeding for type, conformation, and color, and you're only breeding for production or performance, you don't care about the conformation of the color, I can guarantee that's a short-lived family. That's a family that's not be able to do the job for which it was bred later down the road. So where are you in that spectrum as a breeder? So I want a breeder who understands the complete package and breeds for that, for the whole thing. Do I want a bird that has good type and conformation, has cruddy color? Not if I can help it. I'd rather look for a little longer and find someone who understands the whole bird, including the feather color. I think when you see a bird that has a complete package, that shows me the skills and the knowledge of the breeder. If I see a bird that looks like crap, but they say, oh, but it does the job for which it was bred, that doesn't impress me at all on what kind of breeder you are. That kind of shows me you don't know what you're doing.
That performance ability is going to go with the bird's decline on its conformation and its type and everything else.
Yep.
You breeding for one trait, whether it's performance, production, whatever it is, especially performance, like Kenny said, it's going to be short-lived. Pretty soon, guess what? Going to have to add blood to them. You better get that hybrid vigor again.
Yeah. You better be paying attention to the whole bird and not just parts of the bird. Okay.
I agree.
I was going to discuss it real quick. That just gets me worked up because I hear that so often.
Yeah, I don't understand that myself. I mean, are all birds supposed to be pretty and proportional and look the way they're supposed to?
Yeah.
That's what I ask everybody when they say that. I want my bird to have everything he's supposed to have inside and outside. I don't want outside or just inside. I want both.
Well, we were talking about, they say you have a family and they infuse blood every so often to infuse it and then the recon the genes and change it forever. And he was saying adding new blood is like pouring coffee in a glass of water. And I look at it this way, and I actually want to do a video on this because we talk about it every now and then. We say it like this. Let's say you have a clean glass of water, which represents your pure blood. And your infusion of new blood to refreshen them just happens to be this spoonful of dirt. Because you think there's something in the dirt that's actually going to improve that water, as if you would take a bird, breed it into your family. So you pour it in there, you stir it up real good. And the idea of breeding something in and breeding it back out, the idea of freshening up the blood and getting the benefits of that infusion, but yet still reaching purity of blood is nonsense. Because what happens is, let's say I stir it up, I add new water, real fresh water, okay? No contaminants whatsoever. And over time, I just keep pouring that water. And the water just works itself in and works itself back out again. And as you go, the water gets clearer and clearer to the point where it looks like a clean glass of water. And I don't care how long you pour new water into that glass. and how clean you think that is. If I take a drop of that water, put it into a microscope, I'm going to see evidence of that dirty water. It's not all going to leave. And what happens is they're saying, well, then that means that I bred it in and then I got the good qualities were still in there and I made the family better. Well, not exactly, because a lot of times what you did was you lost the homozygous dominant genes that you wanted, because those are easy to get rid of. By breeding to the wrong bird, you lose those pretty quickly. What you end up left with is a lot of the unwanted, undesirable, recessive genes, genes that are going to hurt its resistance to disease, lethal genes. A lot of genes that you didn't want there in the first place are going to be there forever. So no matter how much water you put in there, you're always going to see evidence of that dirt, always. So I always say, don't do that. Infusing new blood is not the answer.
I'll give them a perfect example right now. The brown and reds that I breed that I got from Stephen, the old cocker that had them before Stephen added what they call blue face to them. And everybody knows the reason they call them blue face. They got that pale face, and regardless how healthy they are, they'll have that pale skin. Okay. That's how they got their name. 10 years, maybe even 12 before they got in my hands. And I bred them and went through the founders program with them, making them a true family. I was still getting black chickens with pale faces after that long a time. Now you think about that. And he supposedly bred it all back out, but still the pale faces would still come up. And I haven't got any since now that I've been breeding them, but I'm hoping I don't, because I cleaned them up pretty good. And I'm hoping I don't ever get any more of that. But that just shows you how long a bad blood, a trait can stay in a chicken for a very long time.
Yeah. Anthony, I'm not mad at you. I'm not exactly mad, but I get frustrated over that particular comment about pretty bird idea. I don't know what you meant by that exactly. All I know is what you wrote. And I see a lot of people saying that. I was just reacting to the comment. I don't know how you meant that. It doesn't matter.
There's a lot of people does though, Kenny.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people believes there's a pretty bird and then there's the ugly bird that's got the performance abilities, and the pretty birds are just pretty birds and no good for anything else.
But I thought it was worth addressing because, like you said, a lot of people do think like that. And I just think that's the wrong way of thinking. You could have been joking for all I know. So don't take it personal.
That wasn't at you.
Yeah.
I promise. Not on my end.
I'm reacting by the comments. I'm not attacking anybody here. I'm glad you guys are here. I hope you're learning something. I hope we're giving you something that can help you out. For those who aren't members, I hope you join the membership, the Breeders' Academy, where we can work with you and maybe change the way you think about breeding and hopefully change the way you breed your fowl.
Nancy said it all.
What'd she say?
Said, Anthony, we all love a good debate. Stick around.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, you gave me something to talk about and we ran with it. That's all. I'm not attacking you. I don't know you well enough to attack you. Okay.
We're just passionate, Anthony. That's it. We're just passionate about breeding and we love a good debate. I have to say this. That was a perfect question for the topic. I'll say that.
Yeah. Oh, I like this. This is good. My members, they really help me out here. Better yet, join the academy and look at breeding from a science perspective.
That's true.
So that's good.
I'll say this. I'm from the old school, way back, my grandfather, my dad, and now me. And I've been through that era of superstitions, things that doesn't matter. This is how I look at it now. Tell me what you want, have opinion on anything you want, but if it's not a fact, I don't want to waste my time on it. But it's like this. Facts you can prove, opinion, everybody's got one, okay? Opinion doesn't make you a better breeder. Facts is what makes you a better breeder.
Anthony, ask my members, or ask anybody who's been following me for a while. If I would have took what you said personal, I probably would have handled it a lot different than I did, okay?
I'd have shut the show down.
I wasn't thinking like that at all. I just thought you said the kind of thing that a lot of people say. And I hear so many times that people say, well, I'm not going to join his Breeders' Academy because all he breeds is pretty chickens. Man, you guys just don't know what you're talking about. I actually think that's a cop-out. I think you're just not willing to do the work. If you really gave it a chance, you'd find out that we have a lot to offer, and we're going to make a difference in the way you breed your birds and the results you're going to get.
The aspect of it is, though, Kenny, it's like this. If somebody wants to take the Founders Program and use it just to make pretty birds, they can. If they want to take it and make the complete bird inside and out, they can. It's up actually to the member to what they want to take the Founders Program and use it as. It can be used to make the as perfect bird as you can make. Look how many different type breeders that's in there. I mean, that shows you how fluent the program is. It can be used in so many different aspects of breeding.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl. As a member, we'll provide you with the roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. I urge you to check it out. You've got nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
I hope to see you there. So let's get started.
I'm a gamefowl breeder. I never planned on having all the different type of breeders I have in there. When I started getting domestic chicken breeders in there, I was like, okay, fine, great. And working with them, I learned a lot from them. It's helped me out understanding the domestic side a little more. It introduced me to other experts, other teachers, which enlightened me even more. So I welcome that. And we're growing together. I've been doing gamefowl all my life. I know these birds inside and out. But the breeding process is the same. And that's the one thing I've learned, that I can help the gamefowl breeders. I can help the domestic chicken breeders. Well, now we're getting other types of breeders in there too. I've got rabbit, guinea pig. I've got quail, cattle, pigs, bees. I'm still trying to figure out that one. I need to do a coaching call with that guy because he says it works. Fish. I talked to him. I know how he does it.
Plant breeders?
Oh, yeah. I got some plant breeders, and ones I'm getting quite a bit of. Mainly, I think it's because I'm guest starring on another show. Matter of fact, we're going to be doing another one here pretty soon, is dog breeders. Knew it worked for gamefowl because I've been doing it for a long time. I've had a lot of people I've worked with the program. There was no doubt in my mind that it could work for domestic chickens. Well, now we're moving into mammals, which is completely different genetics, which we do have to alter some things sometimes, depending on the animal. But this thing's really growing, and we're taking care of so many different types of breeders. It's awesome.
You think something that was developed for gamefowl could have so many different functions, though? It's crazy.
Okay, I got to address this, and we're going to move on. I've heard the only ugly bird is an asil. What do you think? I'm not an asil breeder, but the asil that you're seeing on Facebook is not a true asil, for one thing. I think every breed, when it's done right, are beautiful birds. They just have a difference in the breed characteristics. And I've judged real asils, and they're incredible birds. They really are. But the birds that are making their way through the American game industry are not the asils. They're really mixed. Aren't. They have an influence of them. They call them asils. They act like they're experts in the breeding of asils. They don't know anything about asils. And the more they talk, the more I realize it. But even those birds, let alone the pure asils, adding those other birds into a family destroys the American game. I actually think it's the worst thing you can do.
If you ever see a true asil, they're not a quarter the size of the asils that they show on Facebook and the ones that you see. They look like bantams, don't they, Kenny? They're real little,
they're small birds, actually. A lot smaller.
Very small. The first ones I seen, I was like, man, there's no way that's game. There's no way that's game. Then I got educated on the birds itself. But the ones you see, Kenny's right, a lot of them has already American game bred into them, cross between an American game and an asil, and that's what they're calling pure asil. If you'd see a true asil, you wouldn't forget it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. They're unique. I only know a couple of people that actually bred true asils, and they were beautiful birds. But back to the outline, when we look at the type of birds that are available by so-called experts or the more popular breeders, I think one of the things that we need to watch out for is how medicated they are, how over-medicated they are, how much they use medications and vaccinations just to keep them alive. Frank, they're genetically weak from disease.
But we're living in an era, though, Kenny, where a lot of people has been taught that sickness in their strain is a norm. And that's so dangerous. It doesn't have to be, but a lot has been taught. Look at the medications being sold on social media. A lot of people think as soon as those baby chicks come out, the first thing you got to do is give them LS50 right off the bat. Give them antibiotics right off the bat. The only thing mine gets is a little bit of sugar when they first come out to the water and a little electrolytes in the water. That's all they get. I don't give them no antibiotics. I don't give them no type of medications whatsoever. It saves me money. It makes my bird stronger, makes their immune system stronger, because if you're using medications to fight off weakness, you're destroying that bird's immune system to fight off any type of infections or disease whatsoever.
And I had a member ask me the other day, he goes, I understand that they're over medicated. I know that they're all dealing with sicknesses and they're not willing to breed for resistance, but what do I do? I go, you get the best birds you can. You do everything to keep those seafowl alive. If you have to medicate them, you have to medicate them, but then you work your way off of them as you go. Just don't assume, like Frank says, that's something you always have to do. But it is the detrimental side of buying birds from other people. And if you already have a family and you think you're going to use someone else's birds to infuse them, and those are birds that are over-medicated, not only you ruin your birds genetically by infusing genetic contaminants that are changing the breed, but now you've made them genetically weaker when it comes to diseases too. And now you got to start all over there. And those guys, they just have too many birds. They're not going to go through the trouble of breeding for resistance, because to do it, and that's the problem, Frank, is a lot of the things that you need to do to create a true strain, most people aren't willing to do. And culling them down to the best and getting rid of all the sick birds, they're not willing to do, because that's a lot of birds they'd have to cull. And they're just not willing to do it. It's like we talk about breeding grays. They want to get the red out of them, but they don't want to do what it takes to make them pure silver, which they could if they did what it took, because it takes a lot of culling. And that tells me a lot about some of the breeders out there, that they're not willing to do what it takes to actually give you a good bird.
John mentioned that earlier. He said a lot of people that he'd come contact with, they'd have the golden grays, and he'd say, this is my pure family of gray, and it'd be a golden gray. And we all know that's probably 9 times out of 10 just a cross between a red and some sort of a wheaten or duckwing type bird.
Yeah. Wormers are an issue, but we're back to the same thing. I mean, when you get birds, that's one of the things I would ask them if they had bought birds. What medications are you using? What vaccinations are you using? What wormers are you using? Because if you buy birds as seafowl, you're probably going to have to do the same thing they are doing for a little while, including worming your birds, because they're just not ready. But little by little, you can work them off of it. But we talk about all the time, I haven't wormed my birds in 15, 16 years, maybe more now. And my birds are healthy. And if I have one bird out of a group of birds that's overwormy, but the other ones are fine, I'm just going to cull that bird. Okay. I'm not going to spend my time worming them. People overworm their birds. Absolutely.
I've seen it millions of times, even in the wild. If an animal becomes sick, it will get over-infested with parasites, fleas, ticks, whatever it may be. 90% of the time, if you find an animal that's that way, it's sick, something's wrong with it, and its immune system has went down, and they just take advantage of it. That's Mother Nature. That's the way she works.
Yeah. Dee was actually talking about the worming of baby chicks. Well, that just kind of shows you their knowledge. Their knowledge and skills as a breeder, they don't know what they're doing. And they'll swear up and down that those baby chicks have worms in them. It just shows what they know and what they don't know, and how much they don't know they don't know. Okay.
If they were hatched out in the open and on the ground, it would still take 4 to 6 weeks before they would have any larvae in them whatsoever to even lay any eggs or anything. But if you've got them in a brooder and on wire, there's no use of worming those chicks, because they haven't been contaminated to any eggs to pick up off the ground yet. They're not ingested any type eggs, so they can't have one.
We just got started, and you can see the kind of things that we talk about here. And so you can imagine why a lot of the big time breeders hate my guts, because I expose them. I mean, ask Frank, and a lot of you guys here probably know it, that for the longest time, this is how we all talked. We always talked about the name game. We always talked about the percentage game. We always talked about that you need to use all these different medications to keep them alive. And that was normal. The idea of infusing new blood to freshen them up. That was all for a long time considered normal. I'm one of the few, Frank and I, who are willing to put ourselves out there and go against the trend. And of course they're going to not like me, because I make them accountable. That means that for them to be on the same side as me, that means they're going to have to do things completely different. That means they're going to have to cull a lot harder, for one thing, and stop using those medications for another.
It's hard to cull whenever a bird has a value, though.
Yeah.
Has a dollar tag on its head.
Anytime you're bringing new blood or you're getting birds from other breeders, you're dealing with a lot of atavisms and throwbacks. And everybody looks at those throwbacks, or they look at the variations that are popping up and they want to attach them to a distant breed, like a hatch or a kelso or sweater or a roundhead. Oh, that trait's from a roundhead. Oh, look at that trait. That's from a hatch. And it's not true. It's just a gene is a gene, a trait's a trait, and it's not attached to a name that didn't even exist. But because you're getting birds from breeders who are always adding new blood, you're going to see those variations pop up. And a lot of times you're going to think they're a throwback to something. There could be a simple mutation for all you know. But the fact is, it's just variation in their family. That's all it is.
Got to have it.
Got to have what?
Variation to go forward. Some.
Well, not that much. You know what I mean?
Not that much, but you got to have a little bit to go forward.
And you will. It would take a lot to get all the variability out of your family. Even the way we do the Founders Program, to get them to the point when there's no variability, that'd be like inbreeding brother and sister for 12 generations.
Years.
Yeah, there's a lot of variability. And Frank's right, you do need variability to improve them. We talk about all the time that variation makes selection possible and selection makes improvement possible. But trust me, even when you're in the foundation stage of the Founders Program, there's still going to be enough variation. I still see it in my Maximus line. There's going to be enough variation to move them forward or actually improve them. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Just got to look harder.
Yeah, it is more subtle. But because they're mongrels, a lot of times they're crosses, hybrids. From the seed fowl that you're getting, you're not going to see great potency. You're not going to see really great mitochondrial DNA. Those only show up when you're actually bringing them pure. The more inbred they are, the more pure they are, the better potency, the better mitochondrial you're going to get. That's going to come in time as you're creating the family.
And that's still yet they don't have to look like pigeons either.
Where do we get good seed fowl? Anytime you buy birds, you're taking a chance because you never know what's going to come out of that box.
Kenny, you said it a million times, and I believe it so heartily, that you go to a farm, there's good birds and there's bad birds on every farm. And I think pretty much any farm you go to, if you know what you're looking for, you can find a good cock and hen on just about any yard if you know exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I've always said it. You can get good birds from a good breeder and you can get bad birds from a good breeder. You can get good birds from a peddler and you can get bad birds from a peddler. And with that said, and what's going on the internet, a lot of people are impersonating. Frank's having that problem right now. I have the problem. Almost everybody I know is having a problem with impersonators and they're ripping people off. And I just don't see that going away. I hate to say it. I think they're here to stay. As long as people are going to send them money, they're going to keep on doing it. And they're just going to find out who's the one with the biggest names and they're taking advantage of them. I was telling Frank, I can't think of any way of stopping it other than to stop posting things on Facebook. And Nancy was saying, why don't you do that blue check mark? Well, I could do the blue check mark, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to be looking for that check mark because not everybody does that. So anybody could impersonate me. And if they don't know to look for the check mark, they can still get ripped off. And I don't think we can buy birds online. I don't think we can buy birds on Facebook without being able to confirm that who we're talking about is who we think it is. And we may have to start maybe buying locally or somewhere we can drive and check them out ourselves. Because like Frank said, you can find a good bird and a bad bird even on a peddler's yard. If you know what you're looking for, and we teach that at the Breeders' Academy, then you can go to almost any yard and find a bird that's going to get you where you want to go. I started with some pretty bad birds, and I created a really good family from it. So if you know what you're doing, it can be done. So I just think we have to change the way we do things. And this is part of what the show is all about. And it's what gave me the idea was that scamming going on, that we need to become breeders again. We can't rely on other breeders, and we can't take the chance that what we buy is going to show up wrong or not at all, or we're just going to lose our money. Things are different now, and I don't think it's going to get better either.
One guy sent me a message after I posted that and was apologizing to me. He said, first, I want to apologize for calling you all the things I called you and all the things that I said to other people about you because I thought it was you that scammed me and took my money. And I told him I apologized for it. And he goes, you got nothing to apologize for. He goes, I was thinking it was you. I bought chickens that I thought was from you. I thought it was odd that you were selling chickens. And then I got my money took. And he goes, it was basically my fault. He said, I just want to let you know, no hard feelings. And that made me feel better. But what gets me more than anything is these guys out there using their names, ripping people off. And some people's going to think that it's actually me or Kenny or whoever they're using. I see a lot of big farm names are using nowadays to scam people.
You got to do your homework. And if you did your homework well enough when it comes to Frank and I, you'd realize we don't even sell birds. I give birds for free to my members. If they're willing to come and pick them up, because I don't even ship them. I think shipping them is a risk too. If I have them available and you're willing to come pick them up and you're one of my members, I'm going to give you some birds.
There's new scams now that I've caught on there. Guy had some birds lined up, pretty good looking birds too, and said, I'm going out of business. I'm giving all my birds away. Only thing you guys got to do is pay for the shipping. And he was ripping people off for getting shipping from them.
Wow. I mean, look for the red flags. They're there.
Do your research.
So I wouldn't just send money. And if you wire it, you lost it. You ain't going to get that back. Yeah, I see it all the time. People buy birds, even when they get the birds, they're a lot different than they expected. A lot of times they're sick. They have defects. Substandard, they don't represent their breed whatsoever.
But they get somebody that they look up to, Kenny, that they admire. That's one reason they're buying chickens off of them, because they admire this person. They look up to them, a star or a celebrity of some sort, and they look up to them and they take every word that they tell. And the age-old game is, don't worry about what he looks like. I know he looks kind of bad, but I bred these birds for a long time. His offspring will be tremendous. Don't worry about what he looks like. And defects all over him, ugly bird, but don't worry about it. His offsprings will make up for it. That's the age-old game.
Yeah, especially for the American gamefowl breeders. The website shows you everything you need to know about what constitutes an American game, the structure of the bird, the color of the bird, everything, what makes up the bird. And I tell people, before you go buy birds, check those things out. Really learn the breed before you go. Because when you go on someone else's yard and you're selecting birds, I wouldn't even listen to the breeder. I wouldn't care what he said. He could tell you anything he wants. They're half this, half that. They're hatched. They're pure this, pure that. I'm looking for a bird with a particular type and conformation. I want a certain look. And if that bird has everything I need, those are pretty striking and beautiful birds, I'll tell you. And I'm going to find the mate that's going to get me where I want to go. So a lot of people ask me, well, what makes up a good breeder? And I've heard that a lot lately, where we pick on what makes a bad breeder. So we want to talk about what makes a good breeder, Frank.
Yeah. That's a long list too.
Yeah. Because there's a big difference between
list.
A true master breeder, and I believe there are true master breeders, and a peddler. A good breeder is never going to add outside blood. He wouldn't take that chance to add blood and ruin a family he's been working on for a long time. He's going to make sure that his birds are, especially if he's had them for a long time, and he's been working on them a long time, and he knows what he's doing, his birds are going to be uniform. They're going to be consistent throughout his yard. Usually they're going to specialize in 1 or 2 strains, 3 at the most. They're not going to have all kinds. To me, that's a red flag, is when they have every type of bird under the sun, every name you can think of. To me, that's someone who's trying to cover, making sure that he has a bird for every buyer. He's either got sick birds or he's using medications. The breeders I know that are good breeders, they don't have medications on their yard. They might vaccinate for the diseases that are prevalent in their area, but they're not medicating their birds, and they're culling really hard. And I'm not saying they have to use my program, which I do think it's one of the best out there, I'll say it. But they're actually using a breeding program. They're not just relying on a method here and there. They're actually got a plan, and they're working through that plan. And it shows in their birds. And you can see it in the way they talk. They understand their breed, they understand their strain, and you can see that in the way they talk. They're not relying on old wives' tales. They're not relying on the name game. They're not relying on the percentage game. They'll actually impress you. And there's some out there, but not very many.
I think, though, Kenny, what we said a little while back ago, people usually has got the birds they're looking for already in their yard.
Yeah.
But yet they go elsewhere to check. When I was younger, I go to the shows, and whatever wanted, I was back on the street trying to find if it was a blue, a gray, any, whatever done good in the show. That's what I was out there looking for. That's what I wanted. Next thing I know, I had a yard, rainbow color, every type breed that you could think of under the sun. And I wasn't going nowhere with any of them because I had so many of them I couldn't if I'd wanted to. I think all of us go through that at some point. But you got to open your eyes up at some point and say, do I want to continue the path that I'm on, or do I want to do this right? And going back to what we said earlier, you've got to make a decision, and you got to go down one path or the other. But you got to make your mind which it is, because you can't do one of them halfway. You got to be to the mark and to the point if you go down the right path.
Truth is, Frank, some people just aren't willing to do the work. It's more than they want to go through. I can tell when people become a member of the Breeders' Academy, I can see the ones that get in there and they're all excited. They're motivated. When they do the coaching calls with me, I can tell by the way they talk, hungry for information. They can't wait to get started. They want to create a strain. And then you get some in there that just look at it and go, oh, well, this is more work than I expected. And it's not that it's more work. It's more like you just kind of need to educate yourself, because the Founders Program itself is laid out really simple. It's not exactly a lot of work. Maybe the hardest work is just getting to understand what the makeup of the breed is so that you know what to cull, getting to know the defects page so you know what to cull, understanding the selection pages so you know what to select, because if you know how to select them properly, and you know which one's a cull, and then you run them through the Founders Program, then that's 90% of it right there. Now, I will say, and as far as the genetics, and it may seem like it's a little work there, but it really isn't, because I simplify it quite a bit. I show you the genetic factors you need to know so that you're selecting properly. Because how can you select if you don't understand the genetics? And so we help you with that. Once you get a handle on it, Frank, that's with you forever.
Yeah. It's just like riding a bicycle
Yeah.
or roller skating. I mean, you can go away from it, and some things may get hazy. That's one reason I say somebody comes in here and they stay in the website for a year and a half, 2 years, and then they go out. And then they always come back and say, well, why'd you leave? Well, something come up, money got tight, but I thought I could remember all this stuff. But there was a lot of things that I remembered, but there's a lot of things I had to go back and question myself about that I wasn't sure that I had. What you learn stays with you, but there's so much involved. It's something that you really got to stay with, because if you get off of it for a couple of years, it's just like doing any other kind of hobby. You get stale at it. You really do.
Yeah.
But you got to stay with it a little bit to stay on top of it.
Yeah. What I'll say about that, and I agree, is if you're only in there for a few months, there's no way you're going to retain this. That's the key. If you're in there for a while, like a few years, because I can be repetitious sometimes, because I think that's the best way to learn. So you're going to hear some things that I think are important over and over again in different programs. And over time, it's going to ingrain in you. I just don't think you can do it in 3 to 6 months. I think it takes time. But when you realize what you know, or what you've retained, I guess you could say, is when you're talking to someone, like when you're discussing something with somebody, and it just comes out of your mouth like it was always there. And you realize, wow, I actually retained that. That stayed with me. But it's not hard.
No.
You just got to be willing to do it. That's all.
That's a lot of reason a lot of people throw genetics to the side, because it intimidates them.
And I
It
understand
scares
that.
them.
Oh, I understand that too.
Yeah. But here's the thing. When you have somebody like Kenny take it to where you can't understand it or even know what the words mean that it's talking about, and he takes it and puts it down in terms that you can read it and understand it and be able to use it, that's the deal breaker right there. Because I don't care how good it's written, if you can't read it and understand it and know what it's talking about, it's never going to serve a purpose to you. You're never going to be able to use it. But if somebody can look at it and understand that part of it and write it in a way that everyone can understand it, then that's a win. I mean, if you can understand it, you know how to use it, you're going to be able to use it to its full potential.
So, Frank, can you purchase a breeder's best birds? Because when I used to sell birds, that was one of the things I heard all the time is don't buy from Kenny because he won't sell you his best stuff. And I was like, of course I wouldn't. Why would I sell you the best stuff? Because those are what I need to improve my strain. I can't improve my strain if I'm not using my best birds. Now, if they said he sells his culls and they're defective and sick and have other problems, that would be a different issue. But the fact they'd come on my yard and they'd want certain birds, I go, no, this is what's available. Those are my breeders. They would get all worked up and pissed off. And then they'd tell everybody, don't go to him. He doesn't sell his best birds. Any breeder worth his salt, Frank, if he's selling his best birds, to me, that's a red flag. I wouldn't be buying birds from him.
I've had people get mad at me. I've actually had people get mad because I wouldn't sell them a particular bird on my place. And that tells me so much about a breeder when they say, okay, anything on my yard's for sale, anything. He just told me he wasn't a true breeder without saying he was a true breeder, okay? Because if he's willing to do that and give away all the hard work that he's worked for to make a strain and then give you away the main birds, then that tells me all I need to know, that he's just selling a bunch of chickens and he's not really worried about how he's breeding them.
Okay, so the big question is, do you create your own strain? And for me, it's a big yes. I mean, I'd rather create my own strain than rely on other breeders to get birds. But Frank, it's fun. The idea of getting birds and making a family out of them and improve them every year to the point when they're nice and uniform and consistent, it's an accomplishment. It's a feather in your cap. I love it. It's one of the best things I've ever done. I love teaching it too.
The only downfall for me on making my own strain is I can't do it every year. I can't start a new strain every year.
Some people think
That's
they
the only
can.
downfall.
Some people say they do. They have a
can.
new strain every
Yeah.
year.
Because like Kenny said, it's so fun, it's so rewarding, and the changes and stuff, you're directing that fowl in the line that you want to take it. It's your hands that's doing that. It's your selection that's doing that. And if I could, I would just continuously be making a strain. I love the birds that I've got. I wouldn't take anything in the world for them. But sometimes I want to use that breeding knowledge to start another family, which I know I can't. But it's like I've got them good, but the little bit improvements are very small. It's not like when you're first in the beginning of a new strain. It's exciting. It's fun. When you get to the end, yeah, they're your birds, but you want to use that knowledge. You constantly want to use that knowledge somehow, some form to be using it. And when you get a family 30, 40 years, it's not as exciting, but it's still great to have them. It's wonderful to have them because that's something that you made with your own hand.
And you'll find yourself doing that. That's why I created the Black Pearls, is because I'm to the point now with the Maximus line that I don't see huge differences. It's very subtle. I would say I'm mostly maintaining them, finding little improvements to make them better. But the Black Pearls are my project birds. Now they're starting to be very uniform. I'm not seeing a lot of difference in those lately too. So that is an issue. And if you're going to keep multiple lines, that would be a time to maybe do it, because like I have two families that are very uniform, very consistent, not a lot of surprises. The biggest thing would be is, do I have enough pen space to actually create another strain? That would be my only issue, is do I have the space to still maintain my two lines, but create another line? Because you're going to want to do that. But if you're starting to create a line, it's going to take you quite a few years to get there. So don't worry. It's not like it's going to happen in a few years, because I hear that all the time. People are going, oh, this is a strain I created. They're only 1 or 2 years into it, and they think they created a strain, when it takes a lot longer. If you look how the Founders Program is laid out, you can see how long it takes to actually create a true strain.
Well, I've done that with the Kentucky Roundheads that I've got. They threw some white sports. I got the white sports, and I was like, well, wait a minute. I started another line, but I didn't have to do anything. There wasn't no cleanup. There wasn't none of the fun stuff. It was already the same blood. So what did I do? I went and made some splashes out of them. And now I just don't like the splashes. So I'm going back to the sports, getting rid of the splashes and going back to sports. You just got to be patient and not get gung-ho and put your foot down and say, I'm going to do this. But the main thing is, if you're going to do your own bloodline, the key word is patience.
And I understand the attraction to white, the attraction to seeing some white in the wings, white in the tail. I get that. But once I put together the information I got from Brian Reeder on whites and contamination of white and the progression of white, it may change the way you think about white. I'm talking about everybody. He was basically saying, throw them in the trash, flush them down the toilet, get rid of them. It was so funny. I can't wait to put that together and see if it changes the way some people think about whites.
I doubt it, because a lot of people, let me tell you something. You can put up any bird that you want, and they may get some likes, but you put a snow white bird up or a nice silver duckwing or a silver wheaton, the like button's going to go crazy on them.
I get that. And they're attractive when they're nice. But you can't create a family out of that, and they're just going to get worse. And he talks about
family. That's true. But you know me, Kenny. He'll explain it and he'll tell it to me, but I don't think it's going to change my mind. I don't think so. We'll wait and see. I don't think so. You can look at my birds and tell I'm not too crazy on plumage color.
And plumage, plumage is the last thing you worry about, and it's the easiest thing to fix, actually. I'm kind of anxious to put that one together, and most of that's going to be for the members. I would say most of them are going to be masterclass videos. So we'll play it. He'll talk about it. We'll discuss it, and we'll talk to our members about it.
I can't wait to watch that one myself.
I'm working on them right now. I'm actually working on them right now.
I've waited for that for some time now. It's just hard to believe it. You've got it done. You're working on it now.
Yeah, I've got about 13 hours worth of recording.
Dang.
Yeah. Between the first interview and then over 8 hours we did the second time.
The way it was explained in my class with the barb codes, the way they explained it, I'm hoping he can put better light to it, because the way it was explained to me, I couldn't use it to improve my breeding. So I kind of just zoned it out and done the best I could with it.
Well, Brian saw right away how I do things. He saw how I teach genetics. And I told him right away that if we're not teaching this in a way that people can understand it, then it doesn't work. And I didn't have to keep reminding him about it. He totally got it. And I think he explained it in a very easy to understand and a practical way, a way you can use it. And that's what I wanted.
You know what I'm talking about, though, the little beads,
Oh, yeah.
the big L.
Well, he
and
talks.
I was like,
He
oh,
talks
gosh,
about
my
that
head's
stuff.
hurting.
Yeah, he talks about that stuff, but he explains it too. And I'm going to explain it
That's
too.
it.
So you're going to understand it. Yeah, I was totally impressed. I got to admit, the first time I talked to him and I was listening to him talk, half of it I understood because I already knew it. Some of it I was getting. And the other third, I was still a little lost after the conversation. But every time I listened to it while I was working on it, I was getting it. I was understanding it more and more, to the point that when we did the 8-hour discussion, I was there 99% of the time. I was with him. I understood exactly what he was talking about. So it will take a little study. It will take maybe listening to it a number of times. And then we're going to put banners and illustrations on the screen at the same time. I'm going to make it as easy for you as possible to learn it, understand it, and use it. But I do think you're going to have to watch it numerous times. And I don't think that's a problem. My members say all the time that they're really enjoying the Masters Class videos, and they have no problem. They listen to them over and over again. And Frank and I put so much information in those that you almost do need to listen to them multiple times. And they have no problem doing that.
That's the way I've always learned. Just because I read it once doesn't mean I'm going to read it the second and third time and still not gather something useful from those other times. I do it every day.
Yeah, I'm that way too. I always have been. Let's put it this way. If there's a book I want to learn from, I buy the book. If there's an audio book, I'll buy that too. If there's an ebook, I'll buy that too. If there's a video that goes with it, help it explain it, I'll get that too. I'll buy everything that guy made so I can learn in multiple formats because that's how bad I want to absorb it.
Here you go, Kenny.
Huh.
I think this is a challenge for you. Need to get some grays on Kenny's yard. If anyone can fix them, is him. They're wanting you to get some grays on your yard that's been contaminated with some red, turn them silver.
I like grays, and I understand that. I just don't have the time to do that.
Steve says Frank is working on that project, and he goes, I think Frank's pulling it off. Let me tell you something, though. I think if I went back and knowed what I was getting myself into, that I probably, let me tell you, everybody that knows me knows I love a good silver gray. I do. We had a lot of them back when I was a kid, and I'm sure Kenny remembers them too. But they've been ruined over the years. The only reason I was doing these was so some of them would be on the planet at least with the correct proportions and color. Okay. But I'm telling you, the learning process was brutal. I'm going to say that. The learning process was brutal.
Yeah.
A lot of wasted time.
I'm willing to accept that challenge if it wasn't for the fact that we are so busy. I have to do everything I can to keep my numbers down to a manageable number because between the work, the travel, all the things we have to do, I don't know if I could take on another family right now, which means I would need enough pens to do something like that. To correct a family like that, it would take most of the pens I have right now to do it.
It would.
Yeah.
It definitely would. And not only that, you just got rid of one family.
Yeah.
So you get rid of one and then get one back. So that's not doing much. I think with what Kenny's got in his setup, it's perfect for him. What he's got, 2 strains, 2 projects is perfect for him.
Yeah. As far as the benefits, what I like about it is you basically control the direction they go in. You decide through selective breeding. We talk about all the time how it's amazing how you can mold and sculpt these things pretty much into anything you want. These birds all came from the jungle fowl. Okay, look at all the different breeds we have today. And selective breeding is a lot faster than evolution. And all we need to do is look for the variations that we desire, and we can move them right along. I show pictures of mine all the time. If you look at the birds I started with, they were awful. And it's amazing how they look today compared to when I got them. And I made huge progress in less than 20 years. Maybe 15 years, they were pretty good. They're better now, but I mean, Maximus is a bird I use. I think he still, to this day, represents American games better than most birds. And I still use them as my guideline. So when I'm selecting birds, I'm looking for birds that look like Maximus. So you can do it pretty fast, actually.
Especially you start out with the right birds. That is key, though, starting out with the right birds.
Another benefit is you're out there looking at your birds, you're feeding them, you're playing with them, and they're uniform, consistent. They all look alike. They're predictable. They're repeatable. You don't see as many throwbacks. You're not seeing as many culls, and it's not costing you as much money because you're not culling as hard as you had to in the beginning. It's like you have more percentage of good birds, which is awesome. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, but I think what a lot of people, and I'm going to give them a nugget, Kenny. I shouldn't, but I'm going to give them somewhat of a nugget. We've said it before on the show many times. But I think a lot of people runs into with starting out with Adam and Eve, the seed fowl. What takes them so long, they don't hatch enough offspring. They only hatch several birds, and they're using those several birds to start a family with. That's hard to do because what do we say, Kenny? 10%?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's if you're doing 100 birds, per se, the 10% of the standouts. But what I see is a lot of times people breeding, even in a line breeding program that shouldn't be, they'll start out with 5 or 6 birds and they're breeding them all pretty much.
Yeah, you have to. You almost have to when you have such a low number. And that's what's hurting you. And I was there. I understand it. I had like 15 breeds out there. And it was hard for me to get rid of them. I liked having that many breeds. I liked having the variety. I really did. And I lost count how many times that my mentors would stop by and look at my birds and they would tell me, you got too many breeds. You're just not going to make the progress. And I fought it. But they were right. I was lucky if I produced a clutch or two each breed. They were not progressing. No matter how good of birds I thought I was getting from them, they just weren't getting better. And it wasn't until I got rid of the majority of them, got down to a couple, that I started seeing progress. When I got down to the Maximus only, freed up a lot of pens. I was able to produce a lot more birds. I had a better selection. Exponentially, they got better. It was big.
That's when you know you're going in the right direction, though.
Yeah. I always tell people the idea is to get down, whatever chicks you hatch, try to get down to the top 10%, 20 at the most. And then from there, you pick out your standouts. And those are the ones you're going to breed to, and they'll move your strain to the next generation. But Frank, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to select them. You don't understand which birds to select. And you're not culling the sick, defective, and substandard birds.
Just breed them all. That's a nightmare, really. Guys have been there, done that. And I thought I was doing myself. I'd say, okay, I really don't know what to pick on these. What if I picked the wrong one? So I'd breed them all. And then I'd have it all messed up and wasn't keeping the correct records. And before I know it, I was just guessing, breeding the best to the best. And I've been down that road and I've tried it all. I've been there. I've done that. This is all I've known. I've done it ever since I can remember. I've had a chicken in my hand for like I was born with it. And I've tried it all. And this method here, the Founders Program, I'm telling you, Kenny doesn't put me on a payroll. I do this to help Kenny out because I believe in what he does. I'm not saying this because Kenny's giving me money to say this. I'm saying this because I know it works. I prove it works. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I do is just try it. Just give it a try.
And that's what makes me feel good is that you're a proponent, you're an ambassador of what we do. And a lot of my members are. I mean, I'm watching the comments here, and it really makes me feel good to see what the members are saying here. Rolando's kind of egging me on, though. He's pushing me pretty hard. Can you imagine the silver duckwing Maximus? That would be awesome. And I put this up here because if I bred them, they would have the confirmation of the Maximus because that's how I select them. That's what I want. And then be silver duckwing on top of it. But we're going to talk about that too. Well, I talked to Rolando about it. We talked about his birds. And Brian just said the same thing, that if you have birds that are expressing red, it's really tough to actually improve them from there. But if you know which birds to select to get you there each generation, and you're willing to do, and this is the key, and Brian said the same thing. And that's why I told him that I understood that. But it was also the reason that I didn't push for it, that I didn't give people hope that they could fix it, because 99% of the people are not willing to do what it takes to actually fix the color. But if you understand, and we'll start teaching it because Brian showed me ways to do it, what birds you need to do to make it happen. So it makes it a little easier, but still, it doesn't change a thing. You still got to be willing to do what it takes to get there. And I just don't think most people are willing to do that.
I showed Kenny a picture of a stag, a free-range stag, about 4.5, 5 months old. And he was good colored. He was silver. I was excited. Take him, he molts out into a 2-year-old cock, and he went from a silver wheaten gray to a golden gray, red back golden gray, just by molting. It's so tricky. I mean, you got to stay on top of it. Like Kenny said, if you're not in it to stay in it and you're not patient, say it's hard to do. It really is. And that's what I've had to do. I've had to stay on top of it and pretty much work through my mistakes where I went wrong and lose 2 or 3 years here and there because I went the wrong way. But now I've got it lined out. I've made more stride in the past 2 years than I have the past 7.
I learned about the improving the grays and the birds that you need to actually improve them, get them where you want to go. Most people are actually culling those birds. They don't know that's the color they should be Because if you look at the standards, misleading. If you follow
It
the
is.
standard on a lot of breeds, your birds are going to be all screwed up because the people who actually create the standard knew that there are certain birds you need to use to actually maintain the color. But if you follow the standard, you're going to screw them up. So we're going to talk about that too.
That's what got me in trouble because I was breeding back toward the golden duckwing, the salmon breast hen. And that's what got me in trouble. The more I bred to that hen that I thought was the correct color, the worse it got. And now that I switched and went the other way with the correct hen, like I said, I made more stride in 2 years than I had the past 7, really.
Yeah. Back to this, because I'm going to wrap it up here pretty soon. Some of the benefits is the improvements you make, especially when you start getting them more uniform, consistent, you're going to see the improvements are going to be longer lasting. They're going to be more permanent. You're going to see better potency. You're going to see better mitochondrial DNA. They're going to be healthier. You're going to see better resistance for disease. And then by creating your own strain, it's going to give you a complete knowledge of what to do, and it's going to improve your skills. But you're going to know the bird's behaviors, their breeding tendencies, what diseases they're susceptible to and resistant to, their growth and development. Frank, people don't realize that once you get to know the family, all these things you just know. When you're dealing with new blood all the time, you're adding new blood and everything's unpredictable. There's nothing there to guide you along the way. You don't know the family well enough to even select them properly. But when you know the family, all these things are at your disposal. They're like tools in your toolbox. Knowing when to select the right hen, which improves the mitochondrial DNA, which improves the growth and development of the family, which improves the prepotency. So now you have a family that's healthy, active, resistant to disease because you know how to select them. Now you have a family that has the right type conformation. You understand the color, how to breed them, how to improve them. Now you have good color. And because you know the breed and you know what to select for, the performance ability, the production ability improves. The faults disappear. And when they show up, they're easily eliminated. And because you know the family, you know the common defects. So you're always aware when they show up. You're never surprised. To me, that's some of the benefits of creating your own strain.
Yeah. And here, guys, for the ones that love the hybrid vigor and crossing, if you've got 2 families bred the way Kenny's talking about, you breed them together, you're going to get 150% of true potential on hybrid vigor. You won't get that in any other cross. That's the main thing right there. When you've got 2 true families of what we're talking about here, making your own strain, and you've got that family done, and you take 2 of them and put them together, you get your maximum that you could ever get. Now, you take 2 crossbirds, put them together, you may get what, Kenny? If you're lucky, 40, 50% potential, depending on if they're related or not related.
You know, it really depends on the quality of the birds you're using too.
So that goes to show you how important making your own strain a true family is. Because hybrid vigor, Kenny knows this well. Hybrid vigor means a lot to a lot of people, but you can't reach that if your chickens is not bred right.
Producing hybrids, if that's important to you, then producing them properly should be just as important. And you're not going to do that by starting with crosses, starting with mongrels, then adding new blood to them every year, because you're not really getting what you think. Like you said, whatever hybrid you're getting is minuscule. And then because the offspring are so unpredictable, and all you have to do is look into meiosis and the crossover event and how the genes are distributed, the recombination of those genes, that none of the offspring are going to be alike. But they would if you did a recumbent reciprocal selection where you're using 2 pure families to create a proper hybrid. I don't know, Frank, it just annoys me that it's hard for me to even watch YouTube or Facebook and listen to people talk because they just don't know what they're talking about. They talk about the name game. They talk about the percentage game. They talk about how hatch cross to this produces the best crosses. They talk about medications, vaccinations, and they're just spinning their wheels. They don't know what they're talking about. They're talking to people that don't know what they're talking about, and they're just not getting anywhere. And if they only knew that everything they're doing, everything they're talking about, how they're practicing their craft is going nowhere, they're wasting their time, they're wasting their money, and there's a better way. It frustrates me that we even watch that. I almost can't even watch Facebook anymore. Okay, you know.
I feel for those people, though. I do, because I was blind and now I can see. I was those people at one time. I think we all were at one time. The members will tell you, we all was those people at one time. At certain times, the best thing that ever happened to you, that you was never ever around that part of it, and you bypassed it. That's the greatest thing that could ever happen to anybody, is not being exposed to that type stuff. I'll be nice. And then Just bypass it all. That way you don't have it in your brain already, because I trust you. I've been there, done that. I've done it both ways, and you see which side I'm on now. So that should say a lot.
I guess I'm blessed. I was just around the right people all the time. They weren't part of that, but I saw enough of it to see what was going on. And then I had a couple friends. I always say it, that I always had different types of members. Each member taught me different things. Tony was the structure guy. Doug was the genetics guy. Ray was the guy who did it all wrong. Okay. And I never really said anything to him. It's just that I could see that everything he was doing wasn't working, and it wasn't the way to do it. And he didn't have great birds. And he was always adding new blood. He was always giving medications, and he acted like he had it all figured out. Then I followed Tony and some of my other mentors, and they always had good birds, always had a handle on things. It wasn't hard to figure it out. But when I was young, I started getting the Gamecock magazine, and I was like, oh my God, nobody knows anything.
The thing about it is, I go back now, though, Kitty, and I look on a lot of those cover of those magazines on the Gamecock. Wow. That's all I'm going to say, just wow. Some of those birds that were on there was...
Yeah. I was lucky. I got on the cover. I think I might have got on the cover 3 times on the Gamecock. Almost all the magazines out there, I've been on the cover at least once.
I think it was 3. I think it was 3 that you was on it. Yeah. Because I got the 3 that was on.
I was on the Feathered Warrior cover, Grit and Still once, 2 in Mexico, 2 in the Philippines, Gamecock, I think 3 times.
Was it 4? He didn't have nobody for a cover once, and he got you to do the cover. He didn't have anybody.
Actually, you know what? I think they were all that. I never had to pay for them. Everybody had to pay like $2,000 to get their bird on the cover. And JC...
Oh, was it that expensive?
Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was just like $500.
No. And every time he called me up and says, hey, there's no cover. You want to put a bird on there? I said, yeah. And one of them, he didn't ask me. He just put it on himself. So 3, but one of them he did on his own. I was surprised. Oh, okay, cool. But I've never had to pay for a cover ever. It's mostly because I contribute to the magazines. I did all the writing.
Well, I mean, 20 years of work that you give him free of charge. He owed it to you a little something.
Yeah. No, I never asked for it, and I appreciated it. But I didn't sell birds. So it wasn't like it helped me sell birds because I wasn't really interested in that part of it.
Oh, it made them sought after it, though. They see it on the cover.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's asking me to buy birds, and I just wasn't selling birds. I want to get back to doing the members roundtable. And the next few Masters Class videos aren't going to be a problem because I'm basically working on Brian Reeder's material. I just got to put it all together and figure out how I want to present it. It's a lot of material.
Well, it's been one a lot of people's been interested in getting to see and watch. I'm sure we'll have a lot of people looking forward to that one.
Color isn't the most important thing. It's nice to know, and the way he presents it, it's going to be nice to use. It's very practical. You're going to be able to use it to fix your birds, make the color better.
I was just hoping he'd had some kind of magic potion for the silver grays, though. I was really hoping it was like little fairy dust, and boom, there's all nice and right color.
The silver Wheatons?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he talks about that too.
Grays.
Yeah, he talks about that too.
I know, but I was hoping it was just something real easy done and didn't take any patience and didn't take a long time to do. It was just something that you could do in a couple of breeds and be done with it.
It's easier than you think. You may be closer than you think.
Like I said, the past 2 years, because that's using selection. It's everything. You're not selecting them, you're not going to get where you need to go.
It's not only that, but it's knowing which birds to select, and most of the time it's in the hens. That I will tell you.
95% of the time, I agree with you, Kenny, it's the hen that you need to select.
Yeah, my eyes were opened. They were good talks. I can't wait to get the material.
I'm looking forward to it. I am. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so I thank Nancy, but she wasn't here very long. Did she earn a thank you? I don't know.
Yeah, she did, because we forced her off, so we pushed her off the plant.
If I don't thank her, she's going to let me have it when I get off the show here, I'm sure. But Frank, I really appreciate you. Thank you for helping me, and I want to thank the followers and the members for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. See you guys later.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the Bred to Perfection podcast show. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where by becoming a member, you can increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and take you and your fowl to the next level.
We can also show you how to create a strain from hybrid crosses or mongrel flocks, and help you to create, maintain, and improve your present strains. We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel anytime.
To join us at the Breeders Academy membership website, go to www.breedersacademy.com.
Best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
While you're checking out the Breeders Academy, make sure to sign up for our newsletter, The Breeders Bulletin. We provide a lot of free bonus materials and some great information that will take you and your fowl to the next level. Well, that's it for now.
We hope you join us next time for another episode of Bred to Perfection. We'll see you later.
Bye.